All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, and I just want to make sure everybody can see my mouse moving here. All right. Okay, so let me go ahead. I'm just going to get my chat bubble up here as well, just so I can see everyone. All right, beautiful. So to start off with, we are going to go to our default worksheet. So in order to do that, we're going to go over to the main menu, which is going to be the 3 lines in the upper left-hand corner here. And we are going to select company and then event defaults. All right, so as this is loading here, the default worksheet here in your event defaults is going to be what loads every time you start a new event. So what you'll want to do on here is just grab all of the sections, line items, lock in any estimated prices you might want to include, add your taxes, fees, anything that you're going to use each and every time, or primarily most of the time when you start a new event. So for example, if you do weddings, but you also do other events as well, but your main thing is going to be weddings, you're going to want to set this template up to be more to a wedding template. And then of course you can make individual templates within each event itself. And we will go over that once we get into an actual event. So for now, let's go ahead and go over all of the options here on the event defaults worksheet. The first thing that I want to go over is in the upper right-hand corner, we have this options menu. And then on the options menu, we have 3 different options. The first of which is going to be our worksheet settings. So here in the worksheet settings, you have a couple of different visual settings. If you wanted to not show ingredient prices or show ingredient prices, things of that nature, you can go ahead and set those here. And then we also have our default markup. So the default markup is what you're going to use for each one of your events as a normalcy. And of course, you can change that either per event or per recipe as well, depending on if you have a recipe that would require some additional markup. And then you can also set your admin fee rate, which the admin fee is just basically a open-ended fee. It's a percentage-based fee, and that gets added on to the total of your event. So you can kind of use that for pretty much anything that you want, administrative duties. I've seen people actually put their labor in there. We've got additional fees in there for, let's say, payment processing, if you wanted to add a fee to the entire event as opposed to doing it to individual payments with a convenience fee. So it's just very open-ended, and you can use that for any piece that you'd like. All right, so on the worksheet itself here, we're going to have our sections and lines. When you initially go onto this page, whether you're first starting or maybe you've already gone on this page, you're going to have some sections and lines already in place for you. But on the left-hand side, you can also add any additional sections and lines by taking any one of the sections here and dragging and dropping it over onto your worksheet on the right. From there, you can rename the different sections by clicking into it. And let's just say this is going to be section 1 for the sake of time. And then we can add as many rows as we want by clicking on the Add New Row here. And each one of those rows can also be renamed from clicking onto any one of the line names as well. From there, any one of the different estimated prices that you might want to fill in, you can do that here as well. So for example, if I wanted to say, okay, my bridal bouquets are normally going to average around $300. What this is going to do is it's going to allow me to have these estimated prices in here. So if somebody walks in and says, hey, you know, I just really want a rough estimate on how much it would be if I had, you know, a bridal bouquet, this many boutonnieres, this many bridesmaids, etc. And you can kind of give them a rough ballpark estimate. So that's really what the estimated price is for that instance. So going down though, on the left-hand side, we notice that I removed that section that said section 1. if I go down, you'll see that I now have this section called removed sections. So this is going to be present both on your default worksheet, and it's also going to be present on your worksheets within individualized events as well. What this does is, let's say you go onto this worksheet, you misclick and you remove a section that you really needed. It can include recipes and items, and maybe it's something that you've worked on for the last 3 hours and now you've removed it. This is going to allow you to easily just drag and drop this right back onto the worksheet. And if you had things like recipes, prices, anything like that already on that section, it's going to automatically repopulate. So I find that this is probably one of the sections that people don't know about, and it may not really be as useful here on your default worksheet as it would be on an actual worksheet within an event, because there's nothing worse than spending all that time on an event and then doing something by mistake and not being able to restore it. So you have that option. You can definitely restore it. Pretty much nothing in details is ever deleted. So just so you guys know that's there. I'm going to go ahead and remove that again. All right. So on this section, what I would normally like to do first is to start off with my taxes. I'm just going to make sure that all of my taxes are set properly across the board. Again, this is going to be what your default taxes are. So for example, where we are in Florida, it's 6.5% across the board for product, services, and labor. But of course, you may have those occasions, maybe you freelance, maybe you work like between state lines where those taxes would change. But for the default worksheet, you're going to want to go ahead and put whatever your normal tax rates would be so that it populates each and every time. And for those few and far between instances where you might need to change that, you can change that per event. Going down after you have all of your other sections and line items created here, I normally like to do a services section, a labor section, and then any fees or discounts that I might add that I want to be included each and every time. So for example, on my services section here, I've got a boutonniere pinning and then a mock at the table design. 2 things that I'm probably going to do for each and every one of my events, or that I like to do as an option because these are options to upsell. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that those are on there. I'm also going to make sure that these are going to be taxed appropriately. So anything in, let's say, a category group like your bouquets or your boutonnieres, centerpieces, all of those things are most likely going to be done as a taxable product. Things like services, though, you're going to want to go ahead and move those over to a taxable service. So to do that, in your tax column here, you'll just click on whatever the abbreviation is that it originally starts with, which will most times be a taxable product. And then you'll go ahead and switch that over to taxable service or taxable labor or whatever that happens to be for that specific line. Next, I'm going to go ahead and put in this staff and labor section, which I've labeled it event staff, but it's actually the staff and labor section here. And then the only thing that I'm really going to do here is probably enter in the rates at which people are going to be working, as long as those are, again, going to be the same every time. And then if it's taxed or not. So some places tax on labor, some places don't. If you don't, you can leave it unchecked. If you do, go ahead and check it. It's, let's say, 4 clicks that you're not going to have to do later on each and every one of your events. So just to kind of save you a little bit of time there. And then same thing with fees. I'm just going to put any fee that I might normally charge. And then all of my applicable information here, what I'm applying it to, is it a percent or flat amount? How much is that amount or percentage? And then I'm going to tax that appropriately as well, which in this case, since I'm doing a labor fee, is going to be a taxable labor. Other than that, we're going to want to go ahead and just leave this worksheet completely blank without any recipes. We don't want to add colors. We don't want to lock in fields, any of that stuff, because all of that work is going to be done on an event by event basis. So we're going to go ahead and click save here and just make sure that we save our work. All right, so now let's go ahead and head into an event that I've already created. And we're going to learn a little bit more about the functions and features on a per event basis that you're going to use on the worksheet. So I'm going to go back to my event list here, and then I've created an event here for our tips and tricks webinar. For those of you that don't know, you can right click on any one of these fields and navigate directly into any one of these different areas. So you can navigate directly to the details page, the worksheet, or the proposal, whatever that happens to be for you. All right, so here on my worksheet, I've got my default that loaded in, and then I've already grabbed some items and recipes from the resources section. If you guys have any questions on how I grabbed those items, please feel free to check out our support center. Miranda, if you'll go ahead and add in just some information about the resources there. And then, you know, we also have some tutorial videos, which you can check out from the main menu under support. And then we've got our tutorials here. All right, so like I said before, the event default worksheet has a lot of the same options, but there are some additional options here on the event worksheet because we're going to be using this for an actual event. So for example, if I wanted to go to my options menu here, I have my same worksheet settings option. I have that load default option, which basically just reverts it back to whatever my default was. But I also have some additional options. So I've got my load template. This is where I can load in any templates that I might have created. So if we're creating a template for our corporate events or a micro wedding, let's go ahead and create that template and we'll look at how that will display there. So let's say I'm going to do a micro wedding. And in that case, I probably am not going to use flower girls, maybe not junior bridesmaids. Maybe I won't have ring bearers or ushers. Let's see. We'll go ahead and delete some of this information. There's not going to be a cocktail hour. The reception is going to be very, very small. So I'll go ahead and remove any one of these different areas that I'm probably not going to need. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and delete the rental section altogether. And so now I only have my services, labor, and fees here as well. So now that I've got my micro wedding template, I'm going to want to save that so that I can use that in future events. So I'm going to click on the Save button at the bottom. Instead of saving it as a new version, I'm going to save this as a new template. I'm going to give this a name of micro wedding. I can also put in any descriptions or tags that I might want. These will show up on the screen when I go load in that template. All right, so now that I've saved my template, I can go back to my options menu, go to that load template screen, and now we'll see that my micro wedding template that I just saved is there for me to load in, should I want to use that in a future event. All right, so other things on the options menu, I also have this load version option. So as you start building out your event, you're going to create versions. So let's say I do a little bit of work, I'm going to go ahead and save it, and then I'm going to work on it a little bit more tomorrow. So each time that I save a version, it's being housed here for me to revert back to, should I so choose or need to. Loading a version is the exact same process as loading a template there. You're just going to click on the load version, and then you'll go ahead and select your version and load it in. All right, so then also just like on the event defaults, we had on the left-hand side a panel that would allow us to add additional sections and line items or restore any deleted sections or line items. This is still present here, but because we have the design board here, we're going to have to change this up. So I'm going to click on the menu button, and then there's an edit worksheet option. From there, it's going to appear my panel on the left-hand side for me to easily grab any one of these sections and lines, or of course, if I go down, I can restore any of the sections that I might have removed. All right, so let's go ahead and start building out our event here. I normally like to start with a color palette just because it kind of really sets the story for everything, and it just gives me a good starting point. So I'm going to click on the plus symbol. For anybody that missed out on our webinar where we discussed how to use this color palette. I highly recommend going back and checking that out. We also have a video that outlines how to add different colors here. But for this example, I'm going to go ahead and just grab a couple of colors. Each time I grab a color, I'm going to click the Add to Selection button, and then I'll move on to grabbing another one. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and just grab some white and a little bit of green. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and click the Done button at the bottom, and my palette has now populated. The next section is going to be my tables and seating section. So what this is going to do is actually I can put in the number of people that are going to be there. Let's dwindle that down a little bit to 50. Let's say I'm not going to have a head table, but I am going to have a sweetheart table. So there's going to be 2 people there. And each remaining table is going to have 5 people at it. So I'm going to need a total of 10 tables. That's going to be useful when I get down to the area where I would do centerpieces so that I know how many centerpieces I need to make for this event. Just like we talked about on the default worksheet, we're going to have our taxes section. If you need to make any changes to those taxes per event, you can do that here in the taxes section, just like you would on the default. The only difference is that this is going to change it for this event, but it won't change it for your defaults for anything going forward. All right, so the next section I have is going to be my bouquets. For the bridal bouquet, I'm actually going to use one that I already have. I have my recipe here on the left-hand side, and I'm just going to drag and drop that right into my bridal bouquet line. From there, I can make any changes that I might want to this particular recipe. For example, if I wanted to maybe put 13 instead of 15, maybe I want to do a little more of the white, and then voila, now I have a whole differently revamped recipe here. Down at the bottom, it's going to have my markup, so it's going to have that default markup pulled in. But like we talked about before, if I wanted to up that for just this particular recipe, I can do that. Also, any adjustments that you make to this recipe here on the worksheet will have no effect on what you already have saved in your recipe gallery. So you can make changes and adjustments and add things to the recipe here on this worksheet, but it's not going to change that recipe there in the back end unless you update it, which we'll go over in just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put a quantity here of 1, and you'll now notice that my total has populated here, my 168.76. It'll also show that same price here at the bottom. The total price here is what I should be charging my client based on my total cost and markup percentage. But we all know that things happen and things break, flowers wilt, things of that nature. So I always really suggest that you go in and maybe up this a little bit. Maybe I want to do 180 instead of the 168.76. That way I've got a little bit of wiggle room. I can use a little bit more if I need to fill everything out. So having that wiggle room will be really helpful there. But I also want you to know that that total price here, what you should be charging, is still listed here. So you can of course reference back to that. But you'll notice that when we added in this 180, the lock closed. So we get a lot of questions about what the lock is. What the lock does is it locks in that estimated price. So I can go in here and let's say adjust this, and I can change these out to all these different costs. My total price has gone up, but my estimated price did not change at all. So any changes that you make here in the bottom will not be updated there in the estimated price if you have it locked. Of course, if you want it to update, you're just going to click on the lock button, unlock it, maybe readjust if you would like, and then of course you can lock that back. Going down on our description here, we have our description that was pulled in that we already had listed in our recipe gallery. But let's say I didn't have a description in here at all. I can either go in and write my own description, or I can go ahead and copy the ingredients list and paste that right into my description. This is going to be really helpful and handy for those people that just want a quote, they're just coming to you for a price. If you wanted to give them, let's say, some recipes in there, of course, you don't have to. You can go in and just put quantities and not put recipes until they've actually booked you. But to save yourself from spending a lot of time on something that may or may not come to fruition, you can go ahead and copy and paste that information in there. So you still have a nice description in there that outlines what's included in that recipe. The notes section is going to be more for you guys on the back end, so the designers. I would do, let's say, wrapped in twine, or shaped like a circle, shaped like a heart, whatever that happens to be, just information for you guys about the bouquet and how it should be created. You can put that here in the notes. The notes section you can hide on the proposal, but it will still show up on the documents page in the recipe PDF. So any information that you put there can be specifically for you guys on the back end, and something that you probably don't want the client to see, that are not going to be more fluffy things like wrapped in twine. So I highly recommend utilizing both of those areas. We also get a lot of people that say that they want the description to be the same as the notes so that it shows up there on the recipe PDF as well. You can certainly copy and paste that. And especially if you're doing the copy ingredients list, then you can just go in and paste it right in there too. All right, so let's go ahead and I really like this bouquet, but I think that my bride might think it's a little bit too dark. They might want a little bit more white. I'm going to go ahead and give her some options. So I have this secondary bouquet here that I'm going to drag and drop right into another line. So let me go ahead and close this. I'm going to create a new line item. I'm going to rename this Bridal Bouquet Option 2. And then I can go ahead and move that up. From there, I'm going to drag and drop this secondary option in here. Notice how, though, when I put in a quantity, now I've got a total. It's going to add into that grand total, and we don't really want that. We just want them to know that this is an alternative option that they can use, as opposed to that original bridal bouquet. So I really love using this as an additional upselling tool. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and add some additional product in here. A lot of you may have noticed that we've got these wonderful stems from House of Stems that I think are going to go really great with the color scheme. So I'm going to add those in there, and I'm going to add 2 of those. So now I've got a $190 option, but I've also got a $325 option. So the bride can now choose if they want to do a more expensive or less expensive option. But I also don't want that to be added into the total like we talked about. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add this in as a proposal suggestion. What this does is it means it's going to appear on the worksheet itself, or on the proposal rather. And it's going to say that this is a proposal suggestion. It's not included in the total price, but you'll still be able to see all of the different ingredient images, descriptions, your recipe photo, all of that, so that they can have some options there as far as what they would like included in their event. Again, it's a really great way to upsell your client by giving them those additional options there. And Miranda just posted an article there about our proposal suggestion feature, which I highly recommend checking out. And then I also really love that I added in those erytheriums there, and I want to go ahead and save this version of this recipe. But I also want to keep and maintain the original recipe that I had. So what I'm going to do is in the upper right-hand corner here, we have our 2 up and down arrows. These are our recipe options. If I click on the recipe options, I'm going to get a series of different available options here. The first one is going to be to save a new gallery recipe. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a whole new recipe made with my updates while still keeping the previous version. Other options here include updating it, update the gallery recipe, so I can update what's currently there to my new and improved additional erytherium version, or I can revert back to the version that I have in the gallery by clicking on the Update From Gallery. I can also view what's in the gallery now and get a comparison by looking at what's in the recipe gallery versus what I've done here on this new version. And then I can also favorite this recipe to my design board. So I'm going to go ahead and click on New Gallery Recipe. And that's going to go ahead and save that in the gallery. I can now also click my recipe options and favorite that recipe onto my design board. So now I've got my original version and I've also got my new version. I can of course give this one a new name to kind of differentiate. I can swap out the photo if I wanted. Any of those options you can do. And then you have a whole second recipe there with different options without really having to do a whole lot of work. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this here. So next, moving down, I'm going to go ahead and build a recipe from scratch here for the groom. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to click on the plus symbol, and then I'm going to click on the Add Blank Recipe button. So this is going to start me new and fresh. I'm going to go in here and just give it a generic name. And then the first thing I like to do is go ahead and add in a photo. So I'm going to click on this particular image. I've already got one uploaded into my inspiration gallery, but if you didn't have one already uploaded, you can upload a photo here. You can also choose from your event inspiration, which will be any inspiration photos that you specifically went and clicked the star in the upper right-hand corner. Similar process to how you would if you were doing favoriting items or favoriting recipes onto your design board. Speaking of which, we also can choose from our favorite item images, and then we can also choose from our favorite recipe images. So these two are going to be the items and recipes that we took the time to add over on the left-hand side to our design board. For now, I'm going to go ahead and click on my new boutonniere image. From there, I can either go on the left-hand side here and locate my items that I want to use, or I can click on the Add Ingredient button and search any of the items that I have in my item gallery. So I can search by a specific category, I can search by all items, or of course I can search by my event favorites, which again are going to be the items on the left-hand side on your design board. So going down here, I'm going to go ahead and grab some greenery here. And then if I go down a little bit more, I'm going to grab me a pen. And voila. Now, one thing that I don't have here is going to be tape. So I'm going to go ahead and add ingredient. I'm going to search the word tape. And then it's going to bring up any of those items that I have in my back end there. I highly recommend, if you don't have your hard goods in the back end, to go ahead and add those things like your pins, your zip ties, tape, things like that. That way you can get a full total price point for what this is going to cost you. From there, I'm going to go ahead and put a quantity of 5. We're going to have 5 groomsmen here. And again, I can go ahead and update that price. All right. I'm going to take a quick break here and just see if anybody has any questions before we move on about recipe options, proposal suggestion, adding and updating recipes, any of that information. So I'll just give it a minute here and see if anybody wants to jump in.
I have a question about the hard goods category. How do you add that in? I've never seen that. Is that something I have to do on my end?
Yeah, so that's something that you'll do on your end. You have a couple of different options. The first of which is you can go here to that add ingredient modal and click on the add new item. So you can add items directly from the worksheet here. Alternatively, you can go to your resources section and go to the item gallery. And then there's a button there as well that says plus new item. And you'll add it in there. the box is going to pop up for you to add in information. And on the details page of that, you're going to see an item type drop down.
Mm.
And you'll click on the hard goods option there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. All right. Does anybody else have any questions before we move on? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going then. So because this is a new recipe here, I'm going to want to save that to my gallery. Again, from the recipe options button, new gallery recipe. And I'm going to go ahead and save that to my design board. Reason being is because now I've got to think about all of my groomsmen, the fathers, grandfathers, whoever happens to need a boutonniere. So now I've got my recipe here on the design board, and I can go ahead and drag it in for the groomsmen. And then same thing for the fathers. And so on and so forth down the line. So I created that one recipe, and I easily just filled out all three of those without having to do any additional work. Same thing here, I can go in and adjust that price and lock it in. Going down, I'm going to go ahead and skip over some of these sections here. And I'm going to move on to our services. So depending on your company, your area, the clientele that you work with, the services that you offer are going to be different. For example, not everybody does boutonniere pinning. I've gotten a lot of people that didn't even know it was a thing. Same thing with the mock of the table design. So each person's going to have different things that they offer for services. And so in that case, I would recommend going in and adding any of those rows that you might be using, things that are going to be applicable to you and your clientele. Of course, same thing if I'm doing, let's say, a micro wedding versus a full force wedding. They may not want boutonniere pinning because they're doing a smaller event. But these are options to really make that extra upsell. So for example, if I have 10 boutonnieres and I'm going to apply all of those boutonnieres, $35 a piece, I've made an extra $350 off of that. Same thing with the mock of the table design. I'm only going to do one of those, but that's an extra $250. Okay, so Maureen has a question here. So you have a whole roll of tape used for the boot. How small can you make the amount needed? You can do percentages as much as you want. So for example, let me go up here. I'm going to go to my grooms and let's say my tape here. I can do that. I can dwindle that down just as much or as little as I want to. And you can put your percentages in there. It's smaller, a quarter of a roll, however that happens to work out. So yes, you can do more than just whole quantities. You can do a portion of. So thank you very much for that question, Maureen. All right, so moving down here, the same thing with the event staff. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to put an approximation. So for the hours, let's say I've got, everybody's going to be working a flat 3 hours. I would highly recommend overdoing that. So if you think you're going to work 3 hours, mark it as 4. That way, you know, you're fully covered should the event go over. You may also have something in your contract that says, this is when it's ending. You have, you know, a 30-minute window after that. And if it takes longer, then it's going to be X number of dollars, you know, however that works out for you and your team. But for this event and staff section, we're going to estimate the number of hours. I'm going to say there's going to be 1 supervisor. I know I always use 3 team members to set up and 3 members to take down. Same thing that we talked about on our event defaults here. If your labor is taxed, go ahead and click on that tax button. If it's not, you can leave it unchecked. And then going down here under our fees, we can add as many rows as we want. You can name your fee whatever you would like. So in this case, it's going to be a labor fee. So I've labeled that labor. I'm also going to apply that to my products because the labor that I'm doing is going to be on the products. And then I've got that at a percentage of 30%. I also want to make sure that I tax this as a taxable labor. So we've been talking about this different tax section and how we have the taxable product, taxable service, taxable labor. And of course, that just means, okay, let's say I didn't have 6.5% across the board. I had 6.5 products, but 6 for labor. Of course, it's going to have that differentiator there as far as how much tax should be applied. The other thing that that tax section does, though, is it determines where these areas are going to be filtered in to the summary. So, for example, everything that I have marked as TP for taxable product will end up in the product line. Anything that I have labeled as TS for taxable service, going to be in the services line. Same thing for my labor. It's going to be in the labor line. For an example, I had my event staff section, that's going to be in the subtotal for labor. My fees, I have a labor line there, and that's going to be in my fees column of the labor line. So we get a lot of confusion about how things populate there in that summary section, and it is all to do with how it's taxed. So definitely, if you guys ever have questions about why things are appearing in a certain area in your summary section, that's why. The other thing that I don't have on here is going to be a discount. So obviously, we're not always going to offer discounts, but there are some special circumstances, family and friends, things that you may want to offer a discount. So to add that discount section in, I'm going to go to the menu button. And then I'm going to go to my edit worksheet, and then I'm going to find my discounts section. I'm then going to go ahead and drop that onto my worksheet and add a row. However many discounts you're giving, you're going to add a row. So for example, in this one, we're going to have a friends and family discount. I can apply this to my products, my services, my labor. I can also apply this to the event before taxes, or I can apply it to the total after taxes. I'm going to apply this evenly, but you can also choose to apply that to the taxable products first or the non-taxable products first. If you have no non-taxable items, it's not going to matter. On your types section here, you can go ahead and choose if you want that to be a flat amount or a percentage. And then, of course, in our amount section here, we're going to put in whatever that flat amount or percentage amount is. So in this case, it's a flat amount. So I'm going to say 200. And then once I do that, you're going to see in my discounts column that $200 has been added. So now that I've got my worksheet pretty much filled out here, I'm going to go ahead and click the Save button at the bottom. Earlier, we talked about doing templates. And then we also said that we saved versions for each time that we made a change so that way we can revert back should we need to. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a new version. Always, 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 always put a description in here. The reason being is because if you're anything like me, you're going to get 20 versions in, and then the client is going to say, oh, you know, I really want to go back to that previous version where we did this. And I'm going to say, oh, okay. And then there I'll be with all of my non-descriptive versions, clicking through each one to find out which version it is. But if I have a description in there, then it's automatically going to be like, oh, okay, so this is the version where I updated the bridal bouquet. This is the version where I added that chandelier. So putting that description in there is going to be really helpful. And I'll show you how that's going to look in just a second. So this is going to be my first draft. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save there. So if I go up to the top and I go to my options menu and I go to my load version, I did save some versions of this before with no description. So you can see that if I did it with no description, I've got dates and times, but truthfully, I have no idea what was done in between those periods. But if I have a description here, I'm going to be able to look at it and say, oh, okay, this is my first draft. This is where I want to revert back to. You'll also notice if you guys have multiple people on your team that you can see who it was that saved the version and when. which is definitely helpful should you need to revert back or revert back to a version that so-and-so did versus, Susie. I also wanted to mention that just like multiple other areas in the software though, if you ever were to come in here and delete a version, you have what's called this show deleted screen, and any deleted versions will appear in red here and you'll be able to restore those. So nothing is ever deleted and you can definitely go back to those versions there. All right, so now the last thing that I kind of want to show you guys is that admin fee. So we talked about the admin fee being an open-ended percentage-based fee that you can add here for various different things. Admin services, let's say even building out the worksheet could be one of the things that you do. So I'm going to go to the options menu, worksheet settings, and in my admin fee rate here, I'm going to go ahead and put 4%. So once I add that admin fee, we're going to see it appears right here. It's in my my total. It's going to be right here and before my grand total. So basically what it's doing is it's taking 4% and adding it onto that 2201.36. So 4% of that is 8805, and I'm given my 2289.41. So just so you guys are aware, it will show up on the proposal there. It will say admin fee. It will say how much that percentage is. So just kind of some things to be aware. I know some people like to show the fees and some people don't. You do have the option to hide that page if you so choose. Same thing with all of the discounts, fees, all of that information. That's also going to be on a page that you can choose to hide. So don't feel like you can't put it on this worksheet because you don't want your client to see. All of that can be hidden. At this point, I'm going to open it up for any questions that anybody might have. We do have one more area to go through, but I just want to open this up for questions before we move on to that final section. So if anybody has any questions, just feel free to either shout them out or you can put them in the chat. All right, so in that case, copy ingredients, where do we paste? I guess I'm not understanding the question, right?
I was trying to write real fast.
Oh, that's okay.
Sometimes there's a little thing that says you can copy the ingredients under the recipe. There used to be like that little floppy disk picture. Yeah, so we do that. So, but then where do we paste that?
Oh, so you can paste that into your description or you can paste it into your notes.
Okay, I was trying to paste it into the next recipe.
Oh yeah, so it's copying the title, like the item name, basically, just as text, so that you can put that there. But if you're wanting to, let's say, copy the recipe and move it into a new one, what I would recommend is to first save it to your design board here from the recipe options menu, and you can just favorite recipe. And then you can just drag and drop it right into the next line, like we did here with the groomsmen and fathers.
Yeah, sometimes I don't want to have even the exact recipe, but I just want those ingredients. So I just wanted to copy that list and then delete as I went without having to bother with the recipe step. But this is helpful to use this here. So thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. All right. So in that case, if nobody else has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our final area, which is going to be located in the menu of the design board, and it's going to be called items used. So this is a fantastic tool to keep you guys within budget. The other thing is that it's going to help you to use those full bunches. So obviously I can't order, let's see, 3 of these dendrobiums. I need a whole bunch, and there's 10 stems per bunch. So I need to account for 7 more, or I can choose to remove them entirely. What this is doing is it's pulling in your stems per bunch count that you've already added into the item gallery. So these are things that either, if it's a partner collection item or an item that was already input in the system, would have had a stems per bunch added already. Things that you add in yourself, you will manually put in that stems per bunch count. So what that's doing is it's pulling in the stems per bunch here. It's saying, okay, well, you've only used 3 of the 10 that you need to have a full bunch. And so now you need to go and find where you're using it and put 7 more in or adjust that a little bit. It also will list out where it is in the worksheet that you're using this item. So for example, I'm using this orchid dendrobium only in the bridal bouquet, and that's it. So I can click on the search button. It's going to go right up to my bridal bouquet here, and for me to click on it and adjust as needed. So again, I can choose to go in there and put 10. Maybe I want to do 8 and just eat the other 2, or I have another wedding that I'm going to be using those in. It's kind of up to you. You'll also see that the colors change here for these items. So anything that's in green, you are either right on or really close, like 1 away from a full bunch. Anything that is gray is going to be, I believe, 20% from a full bunch. Anything that's in red, you are nowhere near a full bunch. You definitely need to go and order some more, add some in there, choose to remove it, whatever that happens to be for you. But this is going to help you to really get to those full bunch counts, because we all know that you have to have those full bunches when you go order. And it's really going to help to keep you profitable. If you guys want to learn more about the items used area, you can certainly check out our support center article on it. I think Miranda just added that there. So I would highly recommend checking that out. And this is also going to be a great use when you get to the cost page, because it's going to, you're either going to have all full bunches, or it's going to say, well, you have 7, but you have to order 10. So you'll already have nipped that in the butt before you even get to the cost page, and saved you guys a lot of different time and stress from trying to change that cost page a little bit. All right, so that concludes our tips and tricks webinar today on the worksheet. Again, if anybody has any questions before we close out, feel free to turn off your mics, ask your questions, put it in the chat, whatever that happens to be.
I have a couple questions for you if you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so is it possible to create new templates?
Worksheet templates?
Yeah.
Yes. So at the beginning there, when we changed this from a full event to a micro wedding, and we saved it as a template. So the way
we did you save it as a template? I didn't see that.
Yes. What I would do is I would go in here and I would adjust any of my sections and line items.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I'm going to click the save button at the bottom, and instead of a new version, I'm going to use a new template.
That's right. I did see that. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. No, yeah, there's a lot of information, so we can definitely go back over anything that you want.
Okay, and then how do you duplicate this event?
So basically you want to put this entire event into another one.
Yeah, so let's say I did this wedding a year ago and someone saw it and they want the exact same wedding. Okay. Just duplicate it.
Yes, so you're going to do the same process with creating a template. So just like you can do a template without recipes, you can also do it with recipes. So if I were to save this one right now as a template, and I can, let's just say, yes.
I see. So it's the same thing, saving a wedding or duplicating wedding or creating a new template. It's exactly the same process. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. Anybody else have any questions?
It's Maureen again. And on the items used, I've asked twice, and I'm begging for this to be a printable page.
Yeah. I do have that in as a feature request. I think we've got about 3 requests for it. So I'd be happy to bring it up at our next development meeting, because I don't think we've actually brought it to the table yet, just because we haven't had enough people request it. But I would be happy to go ahead and bring that up to the development team at our next development meeting. But I do already have it logged as a request, because I know we spoke the other day.
Yep.
So it is there and it's logged.
Well, now 11 other people have heard me ask, so maybe they'll ask too.
Yes. Hey, yeah, we definitely, things get requested. Different things get requested a different amount. So what we do is we normally will update things based on the number of times somebody has asked for it. And then the page that we're currently working on doing updates takes precedence. So the way that we do updates in the software is we do it per page. So for example, when we do an update on the worksheet, we'll do all of the requests that we can for that particular page. Right now, we're doing updates to the proposal area. So that's going to kind of be our next release. But so whenever we get to the worksheet here, then we focus on those. And then, of course, once we get to the worksheet, what's been asked the most is going to be what we tend to put priority on. So the more people that ask for it, the more likely we are to go ahead and implement that when we get to this page. So anybody that wants to see that, please go in, put a feature request in. If you're not sure how to put a feature request in, you're going to go to the main menu. There's this contact us form here in support. And then from here, you can click on the drop-down menu and request a feature. You'll put in whatever that feature is. Please put as much description as you can. If you would like something to work differently, explain how you want it to work differently. The more information that we have, the more likely we are to get it right when we go and implement it. So anybody that has any requests, be it this one or anything else, go to this page here and submit that request. This request will go to both the development team and also the support team. And then once we have our development meetings, we go through everything that's been recently requested and kind of put a priority on it.
Great, thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and close our meeting out today. Like I said, this is going to be recorded. So if you guys want to revert back and watch this again, we are going to send an email out that's going to have that recap video. And then, of course, if you have any questions pertaining to your specific business that you'd rather ask just one-on-one, feel free to shoot us an email at support@detailsflowers.com, and we'd be happy to set up a meeting or go over anything with you.